Most people don't realize they're leaving thousands of dollars on the table in those first few years of retirement. And they don't find out until it's too late. I had someone come in recently. He was 66, she was 63, and everything looked fine on the surface. But when we looked at how they'd actually been taking income, that's when the problem became clear. They've been pulling from their savings and from their taxable investments first because, well, it was easy. And in their minds, once they ran out, they'd move on to their IRAs. Nothing about it felt wrong to them, but here's what was actually happening behind the scenes. In those first 2 years, their income was relatively low because they were only taking money from their savings and also drawing from the taxable accounts. And much of that was a return of basis with no tax consequence. So they weren't paying any income tax at all. And filing jointly, they had a standard deduction. Because he was over 65, that deduction was even higher, but they still had room. I mean, they weren't using their full deduction. And that was the window, an opportunity for them to pull more income tax efficiently, to do Roth conversions at a 0% tax rate, or to get money out of their IRAs before the RMDs, the required minimum distributions, kicked in later and forced the issue. Instead, they just pulled from their savings and their taxable accounts. And that window, was going to quietly close. Now, fast forward, eventually their taxable accounts will run low. And when they finally tap their IRAs, those withdrawals will be much larger than they needed to be in those earlier years, because the IRAs have now continued to grow untouched. And larger withdrawals mean higher taxable income. And that higher income triggers bigger Medicare surcharges, and more of their Social Security becomes taxable. The very thing that they were trying to avoid by delaying the IRAs, they've actually made much worse. They weren't just missing opportunities in those early years. They were locking themselves into a pattern that would cost them for decades. And not because they made one big mistake, but because they made a series of small decisions without understanding how they connected. And they missed the opportunities that were right in front of them. And if we haven't met yet, I'm Ryan Kravitz. I'm a certified financial planner, and I help people transition into retirement and turn their savings into a reliable income plan. Now, this is something I see more often really than people expect, because here's what most people don't realize about retirement income. It's not just about how much you take. It's about the order that you take it in and when. And when you withdraw from a taxable investment account, some of that may be a return of basis with no tax consequence, but the gains create taxable income. And when you withdraw from a tax-deferred account like an IRA, the entire withdrawal is taxable income. Now, either way, your total income for the year affects your tax bracket and how much of your Social Security is subject to tax and your Medicare premiums. This happens all at once. And on the flip side, when your income is lower than your deductions, that's not something to just accept. Rather, that's a signal to look for opportunities, to ask whether it makes sense to pull more income intentionally, to consider whether a Roth conversion might make sense that year. So a withdrawal decision made in January, it doesn't just affect January. It really shapes your entire tax picture for the year and potentially for years to come. And the tricky part is that this doesn't feel obvious at first. Year one, you're pulling income the way that felt easiest. You're covering expenses. Everything seems fine. But then year two, you're still in the same pattern. You've got momentum now. It's familiar to you. And then year three, you're locked into that pattern. And changing course now would require rethinking everything. Your withdrawals, your account structure, really your whole approach. But by then, the window is closing. The opportunities now to pull income at lower tax rates, the Roth conversions, the strategic withdrawals, those things that were most available early on. And with every year that passes, those opportunities become harder to capture. And as withdrawals from the IRA eventually become necessary, the tax consequences start showing up. Higher taxable income, more of their Social Security subject to tax, potentially higher Medicare premiums down the road. And it's not because they made one dramatic mistake, but because the pattern locked in before they understood what it was actually costing them. So what do you actually do with this? I mean, this isn't about getting everything perfect from day one. And it's not about overcomplicating your retirement. It's really about being intentional up front. So before you start taking income, take that step back and ask, okay, how do these withdrawal decisions actually fit together? What order makes sense? When should I take Social Security? When should I tap my taxable account versus my IRAs? Are there years maybe where my income will be low enough to take advantage of Roth conversion opportunities? Because when you think about it as a connected system, rather than just individual decisions that are made one at a time, you'll often find opportunities that you didn't see before. I mean, you can reduce your overall tax burden. You could keep your Medicare premiums lower. You could create more flexibility down the road and also potentially get money into tax-free accounts that could benefit you for decades. And those improvements add up significantly over time. I mean, the difference between a plan that just works and one that actually works efficiently, it often comes down to those decisions that you make in those first few years. The challenge is this isn't something you may see coming on your own. I mean, most people don't realize there's a window until it's already closed. And this is why getting this right early, before the pattern locks in, and having someone in your corner who understands how all these pieces connect, this is why this matters so much. So if you're approaching retirement, or if you've already started taking income, this is worth paying close attention to, because the goal isn't just to make retirement work. It's to make it work more efficiently. And that often comes down to decisions that really don't feel like a big deal at the time, but they end up shaping how the rest of your retirement actually plays out. If this resonates with you and you'd like to learn more about how I work with people, I've added a link down below where you can get started. I want to thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.